your persistence. But I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about owls. As I was driving up here, I did have a little time to think because St. Charles and Libertyville are not like this. And it occurred to me that when I was an intern, so this, as Patty pointed out, this is a career change. I was in the food industry for the first 10 or so years of my grown-up life, and but I always wanted to be a naturalist. Since I'm about 3 years old, I've been chasing after things in nature. So I grabbed this opportunity to start volunteering at Kane County. And King County Audubon had asked the Forest Preserve District to present an owl program in February of 2000. And so I was going to present that with our nature programs manager, Valerie. Well, she had a death in the family and that day, and she could not come. So here goes the intern, because my whole plan for that night was to go, what she said. And that got, so I had to do a quick get up to speed and just get through that hour of owls. I can guarantee you tonight that in these last 24 years, I've learned a little bit more, and I'm darn happy to be here to share it with you tonight. The plan for this evening is to look at the resident species, the species that you can count on seeing all year round. That's our great horned owls, our eastern screech owls, and our barred owls. And then also who we can look for over these next few months: the long-eared, the northern saw-whet, the short-eared, and the snowy owl. And then I thought it might be fun to have another little owl story that just really captivated me, and I hope it will captivate you too towards the end. So just to get a few understandings out of the way here, all owls are birds of prey. There's not a vegetarian in the bunch, but prey can take many forms, especially with some of our generalist species like the barred owl and the great horned owl. I had an owl pellet that I loaned out, and it never came back, but it was about this big. It was a great horned owl. It was the size of a small potato, and it was fur, it was feathers, feathers, bones, and exoskeletons from beetles. So lots and lots of different prey for that particular owl. Because they're consuming a lot of non-digestibles, all owls are going to produce a pellet. It's not really even just an owl thing. I've found crow pellets, gull pellets, really any bird that takes in something indigestible is capable of producing a pile of indigestibles a little bit later on. As with our other raptors, female owls are going to be bigger than the males. From there on, there's just all kinds of variations. And we're going to touch on some of those tonight as we go through these species. Little pop quiz. Does anybody know what a group of owls is called? In the back. A parliament. Now, how often do you see a group of owls? It kind of goes against the nature of being a bird of prey, but there are some, burrowing owls typically live in groups. Sometimes when our snowy owls are visiting due to the constraints of habitat, we might see a few together. And then there is another winter visitor, the long-eared owl, that oftentimes hangs out in groups. But yes, parliament is the correct answer for that. Let's start off. Let me see if I can move this bar. There we go. Take one bar for another. So the great horned owl is our largest resident species, and I'm going to talk for just a little bit about Kane County, just because that's where my background is. We have had quite a ride with owls, these great horned owls, these last 15 to 20 years. They are virtually everywhere. They are in our neighborhoods, they're in our parks, they're in our forest preserves, they're in some of our downtown areas. They're doing very, very well. I can only guess that you are seeing something similar here. Are you seeing a lot of? Yeah, yes, they are active now, and we'll get to that. But since the audio is being a little hinky, you won't hear. Ooh, 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 ooh. Who's up late? Me too is the rhythm for the call of this species. Higher tone, even though the females are bigger, their voice, the vocalization is also higher. The males are smaller, but they have the deeper voice. And right now you can hear the two duetting frequently as they, because this is their courtship season. As we get into January, they're going to be on their nests. February, they're going to be raising their owlets. By the time we get into usually April, they're getting close to fledging. As bird people, you probably know, just because a bird is immature or juvenile, it could still be the size of the adults. We see this in all species. It's very important that they grow to that size where they can fly. It's going to take a while, though, for this part to mature. Kind of like humans. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. So these were some local owls at Fabian Forest Preserve in King County. That's been one of the owl hotspots. I did a not so great imitation of the adults. I'm not sure I can do, this isn't going to play either, I don't think. This was a video that was sent to me about 6 weeks ago or so from someone who was trying to relax on their deck, and there was a repetitive sound. That's the begging calls of the immature owls, and they are continuing. The latest I've heard one was now, December 3rd. I had recorded in my own neighborhood. There was a trio of owlets that were in various places in the park by my house, and one by one they were gone. They were pushed off the territory, but there was one. And December 3rd of 2022, I recorded on the backstop of the ball field there. So people sometimes are confused because that hooting call is so iconic and everybody recognizes it. But there's sometimes a disconnect there when it's the immatures that are still begging. Now, have you heard about these porphyrins? They're a pigment in the feathers of owls. And this came to light a couple of years ago when I got a black light and was having all kinds of fun looking at things like I had a flying squirrel in the freezer, and they light up pink. They reflect, they take the UV rays and they appear pink. Well, then I found out that a lot of raptor rehab facilities will use a black light to age the owls that are under their care. This is a first-year owl. Porphyrins are pigments that are in the feathers, and they degrade with exposure to light. First-year owls usually haven't had that much exposure to light, so they have a lot of that in their wings, and an older owl is going to have less. So it's a handy little trait that is often used by folks who are caring for owls. Yes, sir.
Is there an evolutionary reason why they have that?
There's all kinds of things that
like, do the adults see into that wavelength, and so it makes it more visible?
I wish I knew, but salamanders throw off some really bizarre colors. Opossums, so it could be. I always say that we as humans are handicapped by our five senses and what we perceive. It could be that these species are able to perceive different these things differently, and it could be of use to them. Yeah, opossums, they're chartreuse, they're hot pink, under black, and why? Yeah, I don't know, but there's got to be some kind of reason. There was a oh gosh, was it University of Minnesota? There's a woman who was examining UV in amphibians and what role that plays, because salamanders and frogs throw off some crazy colors too. But I don't think they've got to the bottom of that yet. Getting back to owls in Kane County, like I said, there's this history that goes back. These are the Geneva courthouse owls that first nested. This is right downtown Geneva, Illinois, the old courthouse. I believe the first year they were there was 2005. And Geneva was quick to hop onto the owl bandwagon with the aid of King County Audubon. They set up a table. They had volunteers that would interpret owl facts and owl behaviors and such. And it was really remarkable the number of people who got on Team Owl because of this pair. And they nested there for 3, 4, 5 years running. And they always would adapt, because owls don't tend to make their own nests, especially the owls we're talking about tonight. And they would adapt squirrel nests. And it was always kind of a race to see, was the nest going to give out before the owls fledged? Every year, things went pretty much according to plan. There was one year, this little guy here. Is anybody familiar with Flint Creek Wildlife in Barrington? Justice the owl, he's one of their education birds. Justice was one of the offspring of the courthouse hare. And on his maiden flight off of the, he was done branching, and he takes his first flight, hits the courthouse, falls down into a window well with a broken wing that could not be repaired, to the point where he was not considered releasable. So now he, as far as I know, he is still working as an education bird with Flint Creek. Now, I think these birds aged out of their reproductive years around 2010, 2011. And then we started seeing owls just down the street at Fabian Forest Preserve. And the same people that came to see the owls when they were downtown they followed them. Fabian Forest Preserve is a couple miles south of downtown. King County Forest Preserve District had to put up a big snow fence because people were going up to this tree. This was a snag as opposed to a nest in a tree. And they wanted to give the owls little bit of privacy, but I really think growing up in that active suburban environment, the owls, and they came back to this tree year after year until the Forest Preserve District deemed it unsafe, and it was cut down. Then they moved to a white pine tree at that same location, same forest preserve. This is about a mile and a half from my house, my friend Art's backyard. He had he had a red-tailed hawk nest in his yard, and then the owls took it over the following winter. This is just about 8 houses down from my house. This is the Geneva High School's water tower. Go Geneva Vikings. Red-tailed hawks nested up there in 2019, and in 2020, the owls moved in. Talk about first step being a doozy. These owls, you see them as they're developing their wings, and the older the owlets get, the more adventurous they get, and they get farther from the nest, and they're flapping. Usually from a tree, they can take off and go to another tree. These guys, that water tower is 100 some feet high. I get a call from the fellow who lives across the street to the east from this water tower. And he said, I have one of the owls in my maple tree. I go, oh, that's great. He goes, no, I think it's stuck because it sailed down, and it was right in the crotch of the tree. But these are wild creatures. The owl figured it out before the people figured it out. There's all these people standing there going, well, what are we going to do? And then sure enough, he wiggled his way around, got himself out. The owls have not been back to this location, and I don't know if it's because Public Works has decided this isn't a great location to have owls or not. But I know the red tails are still in the area, but they nested in a spruce tree this past year. So I'm going to keep an eye on that to see if the great horned owls will again follow them. Now, you probably heard about owls and skunks. And honestly, I thought this was an exaggeration. People say, oh yeah, great horned owls eat skunks. It's not a huge part of their diet, but it is in fact, again, we work with a lot of rehabbers. All of them in this area have had to deal with great horned owls who've gotten sprayed by skunks. Now, skunks have owls have tremendous sense of hearing. Their eyes are pretty good. Their sense of smell, as far as we can tell from the lobes in their brain, that does not play a big role in their hunting. So a skunk is just another meal. So again, I kept hearing about this, and just like you hear about bats that can eat, was it 600 mosquitoes in an hour? That's a little bit of that was done in a lab. And you hear about opossums that can eat like 1,000 ticks or whatever that figure is. And I always thought that's a little bit of a, exaggeration. Owls eating skunks. I thought, okay, it's a cute little fact. How true is it? Well, wouldn't you know, right in front of our nature center, we found a skunk's skull. This is the model that we had sent away for. It's all nice and clean. This is one that you can see. This is that owl there. His bill, his beak, fits right in that hole right there. So he ate one right in our front yard. So it is true. It does happen. And now this is a little GIF that shows the nictitating membranes, which is it's not an owl exclusive, but boy, it's handy to have if they're going after a prey animal, whether it's a skunk or a rodent. It's just like slipping the goggles on, and it helps protect the eye. I thought this little clip showed those really, really well. Moving right along, how are we fixed for screech owls here in Lake County? Has anybody been, if some, are they seem to be doing okay? What I've noticed by us is that, of course, we've had so much development. King County, I moved there in 1993, and there was still quite a bit of open space, and there still is, but there's a lot more subdivisions. In fact, right behind my house, the first summer we lived there, I heard a screech owl at night. And then that lot was sold, and they crammed 4 houses into it. And I didn't hear the screech owl anymore. And this is actually at my friend John's house. He had set this box up. This is a flicker box. And the screech owls went after it. This is the female, and this is the male. You can see, like the great horned owl, they've got little tufts there on top of their heads. This is the part where we would hear the sound. Oh, can anybody do a whinny? I wish there was the audio on here that they're just going to have to dial it up later. We do have screech owls still on our natural area behind our nature center, Hickory Knolls, because we're blessed with a preponderance of oak trees with cavities, and these birds love to hang out there. We saw this, and this was a cell phone picture I took during a bird walk with a local school's nature club. And they were studying owls, so they wanted to come out and see an owl. And of course, the hike is at 11 o'clock in the morning. Well, what are our chances? Turns out pretty good when you've got kids with sharp eyes. We were walking along, and we had just heard from the kid who swore he'd seen a flock of golden eagles. So and we're walking along, and this little girl goes, "Look, there's an owl." And I'm thinking, okay, is it a plastic bag in a tree? Is it a hornet's nest? No, it was a red-faced screech owl right there in the nook of that bur oak tree. This was a little bit farther back in the property. Another screech soaking up the sun. Prior to the development of the park, where our nature center is, when there was just one building out there, the screech owls would actually come forward away. The park has 130 acres of natural area, and 200 acres of soccer fields. And the soccer building has a nice peaked roof on it, and the screech owls in the wintertime would roost up there, and they would produce their pellets up there. So I have, anyway, so that great horn pellet was the size of a small potato. The screech owl pellet it's about the size of, I don't know, 2 or 3 Good and Plenties, not that big. And and interesting contents of those too. A lot of fur, but also a fair amount of insect exoskeletons. Now, those tufts, the great horns have them, the screech owls have them, certainly long-eared owls have them. There's a lot of discussion still about the function of the tufts. Some people do call them ear tufts. The ears are actually on the side of the head. The tufts, though, they do, and you can kind of see, especially with the gray screech over here, you can see how it helps break up the outline of the head, and it's thought to lend some camouflage to how, because these are owls that are usually resting or roosting during the day, and sitting, whether they're tucked up against the trunk of a tree or if they're actually in a tree cavity, having those tufts there can help with their camouflage, help them to blend in just a little bit more. It's also thought that tufts can be used as a form of communication between owls. And you've seen, if you've got a dog with erect ears, a cat with erect ears, they'll do the same thing. They can be forward, they can be back, they can be sideways. And those tufts do the same thing with owls, as they might be able to see each other. Say a pair is communicating without actually using any sounds. Now, about those ears, you may have heard too that owl ears are asymmetrical. This is a drawing of an owl skull, and we've got two ear openings, one here and one here. This is an extreme. Not, again, when I was first in this field, I remember going to an interpretive program on owls, and the naturalist had a pair of earmuffs on that she'd put on sideways to illustrate this. And I walked around for probably 5 years thinking, wow, owls' ears are asymmetrical. That's pretty cool. Well, it depends on the species. You can't generalize with owl ear positions. This would be, say, a barn owl, an owl that is strictly nocturnal. They're going to rely on that hearing quite a bit more than an owl that can also use their eyes. And when sound approaches those ears, where the sound is coming from, the ear that it hits first is going to help the owl triangulate and then direction, put itself in the right direction to find that prey. So yes, it does happen, but it does not happen on every species. Yes, sir.
Why would the ears being asymmetrical help with audio triangulation?
So if say the sound is coming from over here, it's going to hit this ear first, and the owl is going to be able to head in that direction more. When the ears are side by side, they're going to have to do, you know how owls do this a lot? It's going to have to listen more for where the sound is coming from.
Well, bats use echolocation to make symmetrical ears.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. But but they can also see. They're using their eyes sometimes too. So it's just our screech owls and our great horned owls, their ears are pretty much right across from each other. Barred owls, there's a little bit of asymmetry. Barn owls, there's a very noticeable asymmetry between them. All right. I'm going to try it again because the audio isn't working. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? Probably our most vocal species is the barred owl. Get bards? Are they pretty prevalent here? Yeah. Have they been prevalent for a long time? No. That's the same pair. When I started in this field, we would hear sporadic reports, and they were usually in the western and southern parts of Kane County, where there was preserved land, but not a lot of development. And today we've got them pretty much all over, especially along the Fox River. This was another cell phone photo, but they do not have the ear tufts. And this one was just, boy, it was giving me the eye as I was walking along. This was up at a forest preserve, Tech with the Woods in St. Charles. This was a woman, she called me, she thought she had some sort of spirit owl. She was used to seeing a great horn. She said, this thing is sitting on my bird feeder and I don't know what it is. And then it went and took refuge in the vegetation there. We're starting to see a lot more barred owls. This was one in one of our parks that, let's see, hold on, we'll get to that in a second. First, we have to see the display. So watch the owls. So he's moving. The owl's eyes are fixed in their heads. It's true with most birds. But it's keeping an eye on me as I'm watching him or her. And then it's going to take off. That flight is really silent because of the audio, but even in real life, there was no sound. That's another kind of a cool adaptation that owls have. Owls have twice as many vertebrae as us. They have 14 in their neck. We only have 7. So they can't spin all the way around, but they can make that head turn 270 degrees. So from here to back here to over here. Disney, I think, took a little bit of liberty with that, but and then the silent flight, owls' bodies, they're really just a big muffler of different types of feathers. On the leading edge of the wing, we've got this comb-like structures on the wings. And then there's what they call dorsal velvet that also muffles sound on the back of the wings. And then there are fringes on the veins. If you've ever found feathers, and I got a whole bunch of feathers later on if you want to look at them. Because sometimes when you're used to seeing, like cardinal feather, a blue jay feather, a flicker feather, and then all of a sudden you've got a big, what's clearly some sort of bird of prey, it can be a little tough to decide, is it a hawk, is it an owl? Owl feathers just are all around softer. And that is another attribute leading to their silent flight. So this little diagram, this was from the Integrative Organismal Biology journal, and it was really, really in-depth if you're into this sort of thing, the evolution and ecology of silent flight in owls and other flying vertebrates. Now, this is the barred owl's present range in Illinois. In the United States. And you can see there's they go from coast to coast now. And this was not always the case with barred owls. They are an owl that can be found in aquatic habitats. Again, along the Fox River, we see them. My friend John that I mentioned that has the screech owls in the flicker boxes. Well, he's also got a neighbor with a pond, and their neighborhood barred owl regularly catches frogs and crayfish. So a little atypical diet there. But they can also be found in woods where they would feed on our more typical owl diets of small rodents and such. Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time to when our country was being settled. 200 years ago, we had our eastern forests, and that was the primary habitat for the barred owl. But as people moved here, and I gotta say, I'm not a great animator, so I did this. So people cut down trees to build houses. So we lost a lot of our eastern forest. The barred owls lost a lot of habitat. But as settlement moved westward, what did people do? They planted trees. And what do the barred owls need? They need that forested habitat. So they were able to move their way west. In 1873, they were spotted all the way out in North Dakota, and shortly after that in Montana, because trees were growing where trees hadn't grown before. They made their way across Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest. Why do I bring this up when we're in Illinois? Because you're going to be hearing about barred owls, if you haven't already, and their impact on this creature here, the spotted owl. And do you remember back 70s, 80s, 90s, how the logging industry was being blamed for the severe decline of spotted owls? Spotted owls are they're specialists, they're habitat specialists. They need old growth forests, and those trees were being cut down. Barred owls are habitat generalists. They like trees, but they don't have to have a special kind of tree. And their rapid advancement has really had a severe impact on the populations of spotted owls. Have you heard about the Fish and Wildlife Management Plan? So I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this. There is, in fact, just last month, there was some opposition filed to stop that, but their plan, and this gives you an idea of just how many barred owls we're talking about. Their plan is to take out 450,000 barred owls in the Pacific North, just in that region, over the next 30 years. And that's less than 1% of the total population each year. So we're talking about a lot of owls, and it is controversial. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it in the future. You know what, I can probably do that. Does that help? So that is a brief overview of who we can expect to see here year-round. We are, though, eagerly awaiting the arrival, and maybe some of you have started to see these already. I haven't heard any reports yet of our winter visitors. Here's my favorite of the winter visitors, the long-eared owl. Remember when we talked about the Parliament? These are owls that like to hang out sometimes in groups. Here we can see this is breeding just a little bit north of here, central Wisconsin on up into Canada. And then they do come down here for the winter. See them a lot in areas that would mimic what they're used to, basically conifers. Here's one. This was in a cemetery a little bit west of town. When you see one, look for others, because they often, and I wouldn't say, it's that they're being social as much as they are, conifers are not that common, in our area. That's definitely a more northern type of tree. So where they're planted, they will attract the birds like that. This little one, this is a northern saw-whet owl. It had a little mishap. It flew into a door at a church, but it allowed for some great photo opportunities before it shook its head and took off again. We see these, I would say, every winter somebody's lucky enough to see one. This one was kind of a gimme because it was right there on the sidewalk, but this one was at Les Aaron's Forest Preserve, which is a King County Forest Preserve that has the Fox River Bike Trail going through it. And this owl stayed on this tree right next to the trail for a month, and people could go and see it. Small, we're talking, day big, as opposed to our long-eared owls. We go back, and they look superficially like a great horn. Emphasis on those tufts up here, and then their facial disc is quite pronounced. Our little northern saw-whet owl. Here is a look at their range, where they come down here for the winter time, and then again are up in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, southern Canada. Short-eared. How we fix for short-eared owls in Lake County? Pretty good? Yeah. Well, they are still considered state endangered, so it's good. Are you seeing them in prairies here or Rollins, Fort Sheridan? Well, in King County, our two primary areas are, in fact, our largest area of open space is not a forest preserve or a park. It's Fermilab National Accelerator Lab. They've got 6,000 acres there. And the short ears usually make a pretty good showing there in the wintertime. We've got a forest preserve in Carpentersville. I'll show a picture of that in a minute. Brunner Family Forest Preserve. And then we've got all the ag fields out to the west where they will sometimes be seen over the course of the winter. This bird, it can be a bird of prairies. It can be a bird of wet. In Illinois, it's prairies and wetlands. So this bird has some challenges. When a bird is considered endangered, state endangered like that, it puts into play a number of actions. There is a recovery plan underway for the short-eared owl. This is a look at its current ranges. We're hoping maybe with the recovery plan that we can see a little bit more activity to Illinois. Right now, there's only a couple of counties where they've been known to breed. But there's a recovery plan. It's two-pronged. This is down in Ford County near Gibson City. Anybody's familiar with that area downstate? There's a known population that comes to this particular area. Dr. Ting, have you ever had Dr. Ting come to speak? She came to speak to King County Audubon because she's been involved in some other recovery projects as well, but she's working on restoring grassland and wetland habitats. They're actually also setting traps to catch these owls so they can put tracking devices on them so they can get a better handle on where they're spending their time. The other part of this effort is at O'Hare Airport, which another big grassy area. And they are right now still in a data collection mode, trying to get a handle on just where these birds are hanging out. But there is a recovery plan that's been put into action. Haven't seen a lot of confirmed nesting yet, but it is a project of Dr. Ting's lab. By the way, she's with the University of Illinois at Springfield. So here's our Brunner family owls. We've seen as many as 7 at Brunner Family Forest Preserve in flying around at once. It's a great place. I don't know if that compares. Maybe you guys have more, but we were pretty impressed with those numbers at Brunner. You probably guess where we're going next. So I have to confess, I have not read any of the Harry Potter books, nor have I seen any of the movies, but I understand this bird is named Hedwig. Thank you. And it's a female, right? In the movie, in the book. Well, they use male snowy owls. One, because it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit easier to handle, especially when the actors were younger. And 2, such a Hollywood thing, they liked the stark contrast of the white bird with the dark robes. Female snowy owls actually have quite a bit more markings on them. Here we can see the male here and the female. In King County, we have a lot of agricultural land to the west of the county, and then we go right into DeKalb County, which has even more agricultural space. And in years when we have a number of snowies, when we have an eruption, when we have a lot of birds coming down here, that's where we tend to see them on fence posts, as well as down in the snow. Boy, when they are down in the snow, this is really excellent camouflage. I know it works up north too, but it really works well down here as well. Look at their range. You can see how far north this bird breeds and how far they come down. Generally speaking, it's the younger birds that are going out in search of food that come down the farthest. Their populations are also heavily dependent on the lemming populations up north. So lemming populations go down, we tend to see more birds coming down this way. Here's one, another. Beautiful birds. I have a friend he's on Snowy Watch already. He's been out twice to check and has not seen it. Anybody seen any around here? Any snowy shed? I would have. Okay. I would say would you be more inclined to go to the lake to look for them? Okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah, we have our cornfields, Lake County. I would imagine that heading towards Lake Michigan might be the spot. And yeah, eBird has really revolutionized the way we could go out and look for these things. Now, remember, I said there was another owl that I wanted to bring up. We have not seen them with any regularity in Kane County, and I looked on eBird, didn't see a lot of activity here either. But barn owls, have you followed the story of barn owls in Illinois? There was one that was hanging out for a while in DuPage County not too long ago. This is a bird that has a really interesting story. We actually were going to do a program on it because of its state endangered status. And turns out we had a lot to learn. If we go, again, back in time, if we go back, say, 100 years to a time when Illinois was home to a lot of family farms, look at how things are laid out here. We've got our outbuildings, our house. We've got some planted fields here, but we've got all this other space that's open. It's habitat for owls and for their prey. Things have changed quite a bit in the last 100 years. A lot of our old barns are in disrepair, if they're around at all. A lot of them have been replaced with more modern, more efficient buildings. A lot of steel. Look how tightened up this is. There's no open haymow. There's no grain spilled on the ground. There's no food for rodents. There's no shelter for the owls, the barn owls. This is my grandparents' farm as it appears today. When I was a kid, when we'd go down there, there was a tree row here, windbreak, and there was outbuildings over here. There was grandma had her garden over here. Now agricultural practices have changed so much. What used to be available habitat and those structures that used to be available have undergone a severe decline. This statistic here, that area devoted to hay and pasture is reduced by more than 5 million acres. And I can see it here now grandma and grandpa are long gone, but I still go down to this area and they farm right up to the lawn. They've taken away all of that habitat. So that has had an effect on the barn owls. And then of course, rodent poisons. They've actually had a effect on a lot of our birds of prey, but because barn owls had adapted to eating rodents in barns, they were heavily affected by rodent poisons. 1978, the Endangered Species Board listed this species as endangered in Illinois. Took a while to turn things around. I first became aware of them. In fact, this was shortly after I'd started in my career as a naturalist, and it's sort of a cautionary tale. Does anybody know Dan Thompson at DuPage Forest Preserve District? We work with him because he is also involved now in the Blandings Turtle Recovery Program. He's been tasked with a lot of recoveries during his career. Well, 2004, DuPage and Dan oversaw this project of releasing young barn owls that had been brought up. I believe it was from Louisiana. They had radio tracking devices, which required the Forest Preserve crew to go out with antennae to track them, and they had to be within 5 miles or they wouldn't get a signal. So you can imagine trying to track something that flies with those types of devices. So right off the bat, they lost contact with 7 of them. I mean, this started in August, and by September, they'd lost the other 3, and they don't know where they went. So that was in 2004. Between 2005 and 2008, they released more owls, and some they had radio transmitters were replaced with satellite tracking devices. The hope was to be able to find these birds over a greater distance. This was followed up with 11 more barn owls that were actually raised locally. Some were at Willowbrook Wildlife in Glen Ellen, and 4 were brought up from the zoo in Decatur. Still trying to do the reintroduction thing, and this is where they ended up. They went to South Dakota, they went to Mississippi, they went to New Jersey. They dispersed far and wide. Reintroductions were not the way to go with barn owls. And I tell you again, I was just so taken aback by what did work. So just as with this short-eared owls in 2010, our state endangered species board approved the barn owl recovery program. There's actually a number of elements to it, but one of the major ones was bringing back some of that habitat, restoring some of the grasslands where these birds can hunt, which the birds all kind of took in. The bigger component, though, our surrounding states, Iowa, Missouri, Indiana, their barn owl populations were doing fairly well. And it turns out nest boxes are key. This was such they lost their barns. Turns out what they needed was a place where they could nest. And so these primarily downstate, although the barn owl boxes are being installed successively northward, our wildlife biologists in King County is actually interested in having some people put nest boxes on their property in King County. There's the freestanding models like this. There's also the nest boxes that can be attached to the sides of structures. Those modern structures that are all, so much tighter than the old wooden barns, these can be installed on those sides as well. This was a big problem too when barn owls did nest in barns. A lot of times their nests were predated by raccoons, and those nest boxes are impenetrable by raccoons and other predators. So another big advantage. It worked. Putting up nest boxes is all that was needed. By 2017, the markers had been met to take the bird off the list. By 2020, they were completely delisted here in Illinois. just by putting up nest boxes and habitat restoration, monitoring those boxes too. But it's a big success story. I'm going to start keeping my eye out, especially as I head into the more rural areas, to see if we might be able to start seeing barn owls up in this area. Cause for celebration, wouldn't you say? So to wrap this up, we are heading into the winter season, and knowing what to look for in terms of signs, not just of owls, but of the things owls need, which is prey, is helpful. Tunnels under the ground, so our voles that are pushing their way through the subnivean layer. We've had such minimal snowfall these last few years, but it makes it a little harder for the rodents. It makes it a little bit easier for the owls and the hawks. But looking for signs like this tells us there's a pretty active rodent population. I would imagine this house has some bird feeders or something that's drawing this number of animals to the yard. It's a great time of year to look for snow angels. This one, you can kind of see the story, hippity hop, hoppity hop, hippity hop, hoppity hop, bam. And you can even sort of see the ear tufts, the feather tufts on the top of the head, where that owl, I think, went back home with a meal. Now, I got this, I write a column for the local paper, and I got this photo from a woman. She's like, something's been walking around my yard, and she was thinking like pheasant and turkey. And I go, look at the asymmetry in these tracks here. Owls have, they can rotate this outer toe. See how it, this is the same foot here and here, and see how that toe can swing back? You put those two together and it becomes this net with talons that can come down and grab the prey. I asked the woman, so where did you see these tracks? And she said, oh, by my chicken coop. So you might get lucky. It's the snow angels are a little more common than the tracks, but owls do walk around, especially when there's easy prey like that nearby. Now I did go to our friends on eBird with a fabulous resource. I know you mentioned it. Type in any species and you can find out where the hotspots are. And then our friends at the County Forest Preserve District had kindly produced this list of places where to look for barred owls, where to look for snowy owls, where to look for our long-eared and saw-whet owls, and assuming that our great horns and our screeches are everywhere else. That's what I had for you, folks. A little look at owls. I'd love to hear from you what your experiences have been, and if any of you have any questions. Yes, sir.
Great horn hopping around eating cicadas.
Yes.
Gobbling them up.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So did you guys have a lot of, I tell you, Kane County, we were not cicada central. I had to drive to see cicadas. We were like the combination of us being very agricultural and then the way we've developed. But yeah, it's protein. Yeah. Yes.
Can these various owl species all live in the same area? Like, do they occupy different ecological niches?
Yes.
Or will some species drive out the others?
Yes. Yeah. And that's where I'm a little worried about screech owls, especially with the increase in the number of barred owls. Both of the bigger great horns and the barred owls will harass and go after the screech owls. So I am not aware of any, we have our Christmas count and our spring count. And there's been a slight decrease in screech owls, but it hasn't been a long-term trend. But I'm a little worried that their numbers are going to continue to trend downward. And I think of the three, they would be the one most in peril. Barred owls and great horns, I would imagine there would be some conflict there too. So they would partition themselves to stay out of each other's way. But yeah, great horns are kind of up the top. They're one of their nicknames is tigers of the sky. So when they're around, other birds tend to let them have that territory. I will say I was down in southern Illinois a few years back, and I was actually touring some abandoned mines looking at bat populations. And there was all these bat parts outside of the mines. And wow, what's tearing apart the butt, feeding on the bats? It was the screech owls. Little screech owls were going after the little bats in the caves now, and the mines down south. Now we don't have that sort of arrangement with our bats around here. A lot of our bats are solitary. Excuse me, but yeah, they can be fierce in their own right. Other question? Yes, sir.
So, small-eared owl map. There was like populations in South America.
Yes. No, there's different. Yeah, and I a lot of these maps I trimmed to just show the Americas, and actually mostly North America. But yeah, that would be another population down there. Yes, sir.
Did you put an increase on fox and how are they using a lot of fox? How is that impacting? Yeah.
Well, I like to think there's enough rodents for everybody. And those are both coyotes and foxes. I'm sorry, did you say another coyote, fox, and hawks? They do occupy slightly different niches. Like hawks and owls are kind of like the day shift and the night shift. Coyotes and foxes, they can and coyotes are so adaptable. They will eat all kinds of different things. Foxes are still pretty much with rodents and rabbits and such, but I think our presence has driven up the populations of a lot of the prey animals, and there's just the predators are now being able to take advantage of that. Speaking of furry, I know we're going to go, this is the Audubon Society, but have you seen any increase in sarcoptic mange amongst your foxes and coyotes here? Yeah, nodding your head. Yeah, we've had some terrible cases in King County, and it seems like the incidence has been going up, probably because the populations of those animals have gone up. It's a mite that is transferred from animal to animal when they're in close contact. So I don't want to get too far off from birds. Any other questions?
Southern Illinois. Good population.
Of bar.
Stalled this.
I'm sorry, of
putting up.
Oh, putting up, yeah.
Checks.
Yeah. Good deal. Yeah, no, it just seems so simple and so obvious. But it took the Endangered Species Board to enact that, to get it going. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
If not, much appreciated your time. Yeah. Apologize for the audio. The beginning of this presentation was called "I'll Be Seeing You." I had 5 minutes of "I'll be seeing you in all real familiar places."